The Las Vegas Raiders' 8-game win streak against the Denver Broncos is officially over. Behind a career day for Patrick Surtain II and an improved second half by the Broncos offense and Bo Nix, Denver boat races the Raiders in the second half for a win. We'll break down the Broncos' victory and much more here on today's Lockdown Broncos postgame report.
You are Locked On Broncos, your daily Denver Broncos podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's happening, Broncos Country? Welcome into another episode, Locked On Broncos, your daily Denver Broncos podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Another Victory Monday post-game report. Here's the Broncos improve to 3-2 and finally snapping the Las Vegas Raiders 8-game win streak against them. Big win for the Broncos. We'll break it all down here on today's episode of the show, which is brought to you by our friends over there at LinkedIn. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates that you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. Terms and conditions apply. This might be in the headlines for Antonio Pierce and Devontae Adams, maybe even Gardner Minshew. They should be looking on LinkedIn after Sunday's game here. I'm Cody Roark, Broncos reporter for Mile High Sports, joined as always by Sayre Bedinger, site expert, predominantly orange.com. And look, a lot to get into here on today's episode of the show. Post-game report. We're going to hand out game balls here for the Broncos from their big-time performance in the second half, really running away with things here against the Raiders. We'll highlight how the Broncos offense got themselves going, where they were at in the first half in terms of dire straits mode, but more importantly, the play and the changing tide of the game coming in the first quarter. The Broncos finding a way to have a 14-point swing to really go on at 34 points unanswered against the Raiders in this game. Sayre, big win for the Broncos here in this game. And look, early on, 10-0, it wasn't feeling promising because the Raiders, they were knocking on the door to score once again to make it potentially 17-0 at that point, or 17-3.
Yeah, it was looking like it was about to be 17-3, maybe 13-3 at the very least, right? I mean, Gardner Minshew dropping back. Gardner Minshew was looking like shades of 2019. Remember when the Jaguars came to Denver and it was that was not a day to remember in a good way, but he was looking like the same dude, making plays with his legs. The Broncos making penalties downfield, all the things that we talked about. Like, the Broncos can't let them do this type of stuff. And they looked like they were going to go up on a commanding 14-point lead when Pat Surtain, that dude, came out. Cody, he's had a really good season in general, but we haven't seen him get a pick until this very moment when he got not just a pick, but a pick six off of Gardner Minshew. And when I saw the flag fly into the air, I thought, oh my gosh, there's no way there's a flag on this play. Pat Surtain almost hit 21 miles per hour on that pick six return touchdown that he had there. The dude is just a ridiculous, created in a lab freak of a player back there. And we finally got to see he now has as many touchdown receptions this season as does Courtland Sutton, Cody, which I mean, we'll see who can, we'll see if that arms race continues throughout the season. But Pat, what a play, game-changing play, potentially season-changing play. I mean, we'll see what happens here, but did that not kind of remind anybody else of, remember when Peyton Manning and the Broncos, it was Peyton's first year in Denver, and the Broncos were basically about to lose to the Los Angeles Chargers, and they needed a game-changing play in the worst possible way. They got it. I think Elvis Dumervil forced a strip sack or something like that, and then the Broncos went on to score like 35 unanswered points against the Chargers, and it totally shifted the entire direction of the season. Like, this was one of those moments where you're about to go down by 14 points. All of a sudden, it's a tie game. And here we go. I mean, the Broncos, Cody, 3-2. It feels good. It looks good. This team, I felt it in like the third quarter, the late third quarter. I'm like, this team is actually just better than the Raiders. And you can feel that watching the Broncos right now.
You know, when Pat got that pick six, the first thing I thought of after he scored, and all of a sudden it's 10-10 instead of being 17-3, as you mentioned, 13-3. I kept going back to all the takes, after he got drafted, or even last year, people are saying trade Pat Surtain, get premier draft capital. He doesn't impact the game in any way, shape, or form. I think what we've seen from him so far this year, he impacts the game in a big way. He impacted Sunday's game in a massive way. And look, not only just one interception, not a pick six for Pat, but PS 2 interceptions on the day for him. And look, we'll obviously break that down. I think tomorrow's episode, we're going to sit down and we're going to discuss why Pat has a case to be Defensive Player of the Year. That'll come on tomorrow's show here for the Broncos. But that whole entire swing of things, like Denver getting down 10-0 at one point, it felt like an impossible task to climb out of because the offense couldn't get anything going. I mean, Bo Nix didn't have a lot of time to just sit back there in the pocket, especially with Max Crosby, who had his way. We'll highlight the offense here in a little bit, but the Raiders also, you mentioned the play, like Gardner Minshew, looking how he did. He capitalized that 57-yard touchdown pass to Brock Bowers. That was like a deflating play right there. And then all of a sudden, the Raiders start getting the run game going a little bit between, obviously, Amir Abdullah, Alexander Madison, and it started to feel like a snowball effect until Pat's interception, which really kind of negated it. But here's a stat, right? Here's where Denver's defense came up. Like, we're highlighting them here to start because they were big in this game. They made a big adjustment. Not only did they get Gardner Minshew benched in this game, but they flustered and they found a way after allowing 110 rushing yards in the first half. The Raiders ended up finishing this game, Sayre, with 115 rushing yards. So really only 5 rushing yards in the second half for the Raiders. And granted, they were trailing. I mean, it was 13-10 Denver going into halftime. But from that point, like, Denver really applied pressure. Justin Sternad, Zach Allen. I mean, these guys were everywhere Denver's defense was. They really adjusted in the second half, as did Denver's offense. If I'm not mistaken, I think 3 total sacks on the day here for Denver's defense here. Jonathan Cooper getting in on one. I know he and Jonah Ellis had combined on one. Just guys, Nick Bonito getting in the mix here, but also 6 quarterback hits on the day and 3 interceptions. PS2 with the 2 of them, and then Riley Moss coming up with his first career interception. This was just a great performance by Denver. I think for us, seeing how they can respond to adversity, which they faced early on. And it had us all thinking as well, like, man, why can't Denver play well at home? Well, they got off to a slow start, but once they caught fire, man, it came up big. Denver's defense came up big for them as well. The pick 6 is great, especially on a day where they wore the throwback uniforms, which incredible design there.
Oh, man, they looked so good out there. Especially, I mean, we don't like the Raiders, obviously, but they look so good with the Raiders out there on the field. I mean, that's just a classic. Like, I saw the NFL Fashion Advice or whatever that channel is. That's one of the best channels out there to follow. One of my favorites. That had the matchup of the week in terms of the uniforms this week. And I think there's no doubt about it. Whoever the Broncos were going to be playing this week with the throwbacks, that was going to be the uniform matchup of the week. So you look good, you play good, you get the first interception of Riley Moss's career, Cody, on a play in which, man, the Raiders tested him a couple of times in this game, and he went up and made a few plays on the ball. So you and I talked about it in the lead up to the game. You're getting to the quarterback. You're forcing the quarterbacks to accelerate their time to throw, and your corners, your DBs are getting in position. So now it's time for those corners to make some plays. We saw it, Cody, the white man can't jump, duo of Pat Surtain and Riley Moss combining for 3 interceptions in this game and really proving to be maybe the best cornerback duo in the NFL early this season. I know there's all sorts of hyperbole floating around after a big win like this, especially you've won a couple straight games, but those guys in this game, two passes defensed each and 3 total interceptions, as well as obviously 7 combined tackles there for PS2 and Riley Moss on the day. So those guys keying what was an essential turnaround for that defense after, like you said, the way this game started.
Yeah, speaking of that, obviously I posted on Twitter the graphic that's been floating around of the white man can't jump with obviously Riley Moss and Pat Surtain's face photoshopped in there. Shout out to Mr. Boggins and obviously Super Bowl on Twitter. Apparently they made it. So obviously give credit to them for that. Great. I mean, that's just a great photo to break out for, a game where these 2 guys really emerged. So save that. And obviously that might be good for, a lot of games to come here for the Broncos. It wasn't all pretty. The offense really struggled in the first half, specifically no rhythm. They couldn't get anything going in the run game early on, but Bo Nix and the Broncos offense, they responded in a big time way in the second half. We'll break down their performance and much more here on today's Locked On Broncos post-game report. Today's episode of the show is brought to you by friends over there at LinkedIn Jobs. And when you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality candidates that are right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help you find the right professionals for your job, for your team, faster and for free. LinkedIn, they're not just a job board. LinkedIn helps you hire professionals that you can't find anywhere else, even those who aren't actively looking for a new job, but they might be open to the perfect role. In a given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place. On LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses, they get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. So hire professionals like a professional with LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn knows that small businesses are wearing so many hats and might not have the time or the resources to hire. So post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. Halloween lets us have fun with what scares us, but what about those fears that don't involve zombies and ghosts? Therapy is a great tool for facing your fears and finding ways to overcome them, because sometimes the scariest thing is not facing our fears in the first place and holding ourselves back. That's where therapy can be beneficial. Whether you're dealing with stress, anxiety, depression, or a whole other list of things, therapy is a great way to be able to get some things off of your chest, because burying it deep inside is not necessarily the greatest answer. I've utilized therapy in the past before, and I found it to be very beneficial, because life doesn't come with a playbook or a manual that tells you how to react to certain things when you deal with loss or you deal with stress or anxiety. But therapy can help you understand yourself a little bit better, and that's where BetterHelp can come in handy. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online. It's designed to be convenient, flexible, and best of all, suited to your schedule, where you can do it right from the comfort of your own home. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist, and you can switch therapists at any time at no additional charge if you don't vibe well with them. Overcome your fears with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOn today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOn.
Might not have been the sideline spat that did it, but the Broncos offense, they found a way to get things going in the second half. And yes, there's a sideline spat to maybe be discussed. Maybe just a little bit of love between a head coach and his quarterback. But Bo Nix, the offense, the running game, man, they had things cooking in the second half, especially against the Raiders. But maybe a little drive at the end of the first half might have been what got them going. Cody and I are going to talk about the offense's performance against the Las Vegas Raiders as the Denver Broncos improve to 3-2 on the season, 3 straight wins. Bo Nix making history, and Broncos Country, we're so excited that you've chosen to be part of that with us for making Locked On Broncos your first listen of the day every single day. And especially a shout out to all of the new listeners that we know are going to be jumping in on this Victory Monday as well. So thanks for tuning in. If you haven't already, hit subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts, as well as go over and do the same on YouTube. Cody, let's talk about this, and I want to hear from everybody that's listening as well. But man, the turning point of this game, I think a lot of people are going to say it was the little, I don't know what you want to even call it. If it's the spat or what it was on the sideline there. We saw Bo Nix getting fired up. We saw Davis Webb, the quarterback's coach, getting fired up. We saw Sean Payton kind of going back and forth with it. But to me, it was a drive right before the end of the first half where the Broncos got into field goal range for Will Lutz. The Raiders had a penalty on the field goal. Will Lutz gets a mulligan after missing from 59. You go up 13-10 at the half. That was a turning point drive because Bo made a big throw to Troy Franklin there. This was not a pretty offensive performance in the first half, but these guys got it going after halftime.
Yeah, look, let's talk about the first half offense too, and I'll highlight that drive that you had mentioned. The offense in the first half, Denver was really bad on third down. They were 1 of 6 on third down. They didn't have very good efficiency on first and second down. So I think when fans are watching it and they're seeing the offense struggle and they're in a hole on third and long, all of a sudden everyone's like, oh, Bo Nix is not the quarterback. He's not the answer. That's why I've been preaching, folks. Let your quarterback play, let him grow. And obviously Bo in the second half, they really turned it on here, but he was sacked twice. In the first half, Max Crosby didn't seem like he had a real problem with his ankle at all. He's a force in nature. But Denver, they also had no run game. They only had 40 yards on the ground in the first half. We mentioned third down statistics. They were able to find a way to finish this game with 109 yards rushing on the ground, really led by Javonte Williams in the second half, having some big runs. Jaleel McLaughlin had a big run because Denver, penalties also another issue that hurt them in the first half. Denver had some very long first down situations, some very long second down situations, obviously some third and long situations. And so it made it easier for the Raiders to kind of just stand back, in terms of their coverage-wise, play off, and then send pressure after Bo Nix and them. But that drive that you're talking about, a little bit of the spark, obviously with Denver tied up now 10-10 after the PS2 pick six. You get an opportunity. Then Denver only had one timeout at this point, which is great, right? Defense got to stop. They forced a punt. Denver was able to get some plays downfield. And then you see Bo Nix, I think, looking a little more comfortable. He's facing pressure off the left side. He rolls to his right, kind of steps up and throws a pass, across the middle while on the run to Troy Franklin on a little bit of an over route. Okay, hey, Denver's got manageable situation. Now, 59-yard field goal. I think we can all agree 55 plus. It's probably not Will Lutz's range, though he did make a 51-yard. So maybe like 50 to 52 might be his range at that point in terms of where you're like, hey, I'm not as worried. But obviously the penalty makes it a little bit easier. You go into halftime 13-10. Denver's first drive, once again, just sputters out, coming out of the second half. But it's ironic, Sayre, for the second week in a row, the Broncos' second drive of the second half led to a touchdown. And obviously it was Jaleel McLaughlin catching a swing pass out of the backfield here and then diving, making the extra effort play. What I liked about this drive is it just featured a couple of plays where Denver just demonstrated grit, a little bit more resiliency, wanting it a little bit more than the Raiders. There was one run where Javonte was, broke off a nice little run. Guys are wrapped up around his waist. Ben Powers is pushing him forward, and it's like, okay, hey, Denver's got some momentum here. Little Jordan Humphrey catches a bubble pass and runs for extra yards, and all of a sudden Denver's in a goal situation, and they find a way. Bo gets back to the 4-yard line because he was facing pressure off the right side, and then Jaleel McLaughlin makes his play. Denver all of a sudden is cooking. Now the defense is fired up off of it. That right there is where I think things are so important. The run game got going in the second half. We mentioned Denver. They had 40 yards rushing at halftime. They finished the game with 109 yards on the ground and a mile-high salute. Shout out to Javonte Williams. Really, I think, being a big catalyst, running through the face of Trevon Moehrig. Obviously, Marshawn Lynch would have been proud there. It was a great overall team offensive effort in the second half. They really built off of that, what the defense was able to do, special teams, complimentary football, and it was an ultimate team win.
Yeah, it was. And we saw Bo Nix really take advantage of some good opportunities that he was given. The turnovers forced, to the field position set up by the punt returns and the kickoff returns as well. And he totaled 3 touchdowns in this game, Cody. I mean, 2 passing touchdowns, a rushing touchdown. Could have had another touchdown pass to Troy Franklin that we talked about the spat on the sideline with he and Sean Payton. I don't know that I guess we may never know what it exactly had to do with, but my thought
was, we got an idea on it.
You got an idea on? Okay.
Yeah. So Sean, we met with Sean after the game, and Sean at first said he wasn't going to tell us what it was about, but then kind of asked about Nix and then kind of made like the reference and comparison. It was like, he's got a little bit of Ferris Bueller in him that we still need to get out. Like, apparently from the vibe of it, and you go and you catch Sean's final comment of the press conference, he talks about how, you have a play called a certain way. You don't want it flipped, but it gets flipped. That's kind of what it was a little bit. But I love the fire there that you see there. Look, I think a lot of people look at that and are like, oh my gosh, something's wrong. Like, folks, if you ever played competitive sports, that's part of the game. Like, you're going to have heated moments with your teammates. You can have heated moments sometimes with your coach. I liked it. I felt like it was a healthy way to do it. Like, we saw some fire from Bo, and Bo was usually very even keeled, but man, angry Bo Nix, fun Bo Nix to watch.
I really enjoyed it, Cody. And I think that the throw that he made right before we saw that was, one of his better throws. I know he said in his press conference after the game, he's like, no, I overthrew him, and it was impressive that he was able to even get there to the ball. But to me, that was a nice ball right there. That was it. That was 6 points. Yeah. And the Broncos had a chance to go up 27-10 at that point. It kind of felt like, all right, are you going to let the Raiders creep back into this game? So it was a nice play from him, and it was a nice second half from him. We saw him make some big throws. We saw him make good decisions with the ball. 3 straight games now without a turnover from Bo Nix, and he even prevented a turnover when there was a little bit of a miscommunication with Luke Wattenberg on a snap that he must have thought Bo was under center or something. So kind of a weird deal there, but 3 straight games, no turnovers for Bo. Obviously, very, very good results for the Broncos overall. 3-game winning streak, the first 3-game winning streak for a rookie quarterback in Denver Broncos franchise history. First rookie quarterback with 2 passing touchdowns, a rushing touchdown, and no turnovers ever. First rookie quarterback to do that since Tim Tebow as well. Tim must have had a turnover in that game back in 2011, though, so didn't quite make the overall history there. But Bo Nix, just it's we saw last week. We all saw it in the rain. Everybody wants to, throw all those things in as though everything's being judged equally without considering the circumstances. But we see what Bo was able to do in Tampa Bay and now in Denver without rainy conditions and a terrible, this, that, and the other throughout the game. I think we see the strides are being made, and he's looking pretty good out there.
It's amazing what happens when you actually let a full game play out. Like, people were writing the Bo Nix obituary in the first half, and it's such an annoying thing because, look, I understand this fan base's, desire to have a franchise quarterback. And look, Bo's not there yet, right? But the hope is that he can grow into that. So what are we evaluating here when it comes to Bo? Is he growing on a week-to-week basis? The no turnovers has been a very, very positive sign for him. But what he was able to do in the second half to come out to get the Broncos offense in rhythm a little bit, you notice when you have a little bit of a run game, it helps make things a little easier for everybody. Denver's offense across the board, I think everyone the offense isn't playing well. It's Bo Nix's fault. I would say the offense in the first half, they weren't able to run the ball well. They didn't do a great job blocking Max Crosby. Bo Nix didn't have time for any long developing plays off of play action to set up. Sometimes I felt like the route concepts were a little bit too long developing, and when you don't have time for that, it's rough. And when your production on first and second down is bad, it's not good when you're in third and long situations. So I'd say collectively the offense wasn't great in the first half, not just on the quarterback. Quarterback Bo could have been better in a lot of instances as well. The tape will show that. But the unfair criticism of piling everything on Bo Nix when the offense struggles is becoming a little tiresome. And it also reflects, I think, the level of impatience that some in the fan base have. Look, I think some are typically the loudest. Let Bo grow. I'm going to continue to pound that drum until you get tired of hearing it, because he's doing things where he is showcasing growth. He's not turning the football over. And obviously he responds with a 3-touchdown performance here against the Raiders and snapping that 8-game win streak that they had at home. This is what we like to see, but you still have to continue to grow along the way. It's not crowned just yet, but keep growing and let Bo just keep developing where he's at. That's the thing I'll leave there. But Broncos country coming off of a victory, it's always important to highlight who gets a game ball. I'm going to hand out a game ball to the Broncos defense, and some players there will highlight who that is. Sayre, he's going to give his game ball picks, but we're also going to debut something new here. Anytime Denver wins, we're also going to look back at an unsung hero of the game. We'll break that down and much more here in today's Locked On Broncos post-game report. Broncos country, FanDuel is the sponsor of today's episode of the show. And NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats. You can view live play-by-play and so much more on the same exact page where you place your bets, whether that's the money line, the spread, player props. FanDuel has a wide variety of different options that allow you to maximize your football experience. Not only is the NFL season here, but hey, baseball is in the postseason. It's the perfect time to get in on the action on FanDuel. And when you do, you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. Once again, when you place your first $5 bet, you'll get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed that you can use on the MLB, the NFL. The NBA season is starting up. They have a wide variety of things that you can get involved with inside of FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So visit the website today and check it out, FanDuel.com. Once again, that's FanDuel.com. As Oprah says, you get a game ball, you get a game ball, and you get a game ball. Broncos country, for making us your first listen of the day. Thank you so much. You make the show exactly what it is. We appreciate you taking time out of your day to react and to listen and to watch when we break down the Denver Broncos. It's nice when the team is winning 3-2, and a win against an AFC West divisional rival makes things a little bit sweeter with a chef's kiss here. Thank you so much, Broncos country. We're going to hand out game balls here on today's episode of the show. Sayre, I really want to kick things off to you. I want you to start off with who you're giving your game ball to, because we got so much still we have to break down here in terms of some of these highlight performances.
Well, I'm giving a game ball to Bo Nix here, Cody, because I feel like you watch the course of this game, and like you talked about, and like we just discussed in the previous segment, really when you look at, okay, everybody's writing the obituary at the end of the first half and saying, like, this guy, he can't hack it. This guy's not accurate. This guy can't do this. This guy can't do that. The Broncos offense is this because of Bo Nix. So we could have had this guy. We could have done this. I mean, it is tiring, and I get it. That's part of being a fan. Everybody wants to see the best possible outcome as quickly as possible for the Denver Broncos. We were spoiled getting an MVP caliber guy in Peyton Manning immediately after he signed in 2012. I get it. Like, that's what we all want. We all want to see the instant overnight success. You want the CJ Stroud. You want the Patrick Mahomes. You want all this. And I think we've seen a lot of really great things from Bo Nix, but man, for him to go out there to win 3 straight games, 3 straight starts for the very first time for a rookie quarterback in Denver Broncos history, that is massive. And to come out, man, he had the cojones to walk up into the stadium wearing John Elway's old jersey. I mean, that's
Pressure.
crazy. That is pressure. That's way different than, remember, Russ showing up to camp with his own throwback jersey on. I mean, you're putting on John Elway's jersey, walking into the house that John built
On Raiders Day.
On Raiders Day. I mean, my goodness. So I love that Bo did that. I love the confidence that people asking all these questions about his confidence, this, that, and the other. The dude is so confident, and you see it just from that alone. But then for him to kind of shout back at Sean Payton on the sideline, and then we heard other people say, like, he went and got at the receivers after that and was having kind of that fired up conversation with his teammates, leading this team. Bo Nix, 3 total touchdowns, no turnovers, 3 straight wins for the first time as a rookie quarterback. I mean, that's awesome to see. So Bo gets my game ball from this one.
I mean, an efficient second half, 19 of 27 passing. You mentioned the 2 passing touchdowns. Nice to see Josh Reynolds get one in the back corner there. I thought he had a beautifully placed dime to Cortland Sutton down the left sideline as well. Perfectly over the shoulder, bang, perfect. There was defensive pass interference. It didn't matter. Cortland got it, spun the ball on the defender, as well. It was a great game, I think, from Cortland, low Jordan Humphrey. Like, guys in the receiving game benefited. Adam Troutman as well. A lot of it off of what Bo Nix was able to do and protection. Even though Alex Palczewski got hurt and wasn't in this game, and you had to have Matt Parrott at right tackle. Garrett Bowles even went down on a play, and you had Frank Crum and Matt Parrott in at the same exact time at offensive tackle. I was like, oh no, Denver's in dire straits here. Bo Nix, the offense, they responded a big way. I love the fact you gave Bo a game ball. Big Nix energy is obviously the thumbnail title of today's episode of the show here, Locked On Broncos. I'm going to give my game ball. It's going to be a joint game ball to Patrick Surtain II and obviously Riley Moss, the cornerback duo, in terms of what they've been able to do. And it's crazy because also it's like I'm leaving out Jaquan McMillan. Jaquan McMillan has had a quiet, terrific year this year for the Broncos inside the nickel. It's hard to play, but Pat Surtain, the pick 6, 100 yards, completely changed the landscape of this game. And then he gets a second interception where he just plays his hand through the ball, knocks it up in the air, goes in and grabs it. Like, on a day where he did a jersey swap with Champ Bailey, that was huge, right? But then obviously got to give kudos to Riley Moss, who's seen a lot of targets because teams are kind of scared to throw it Pat's way, and Pat made them pay when they did. But Riley Moss has finally made them pay. He comes up with his first career interception. Had a chance to talk with him after the game. He plans on framing that jersey. I mean, not the jersey, framing the game ball inside his house here when he gets that obviously situated there. But it just, the speed, the dynamic that these two guys, and you mentioned it earlier, I think that there's a legitimate case that they could be one of the top cornerback duos right now in the National Football League. When you talk about production in terms of how they're targeted, passer rating when looking their way, like Denver's defense is playing well, and their coverage because of these guys, and even Jaquan McMillan is a big reason why. That's why I'm going to give them a joint game ball here on my end. Also, I'm a defensive back guy, Sayre. You know me. I got to give love to the defensive back, specifically Riley Moss as well. But I want you to debut this, right? Because I feel like we can make a case for a couple of players. Anytime the Broncos win, we'll always give our game balls, but we're also going to give out an unsung hero game ball that we're debuting here on today's episode of the show. There are a couple candidates I feel like could have done it. I feel like Javonte Williams could have definitely been a candidate for this, but I'm going to give it to Marvin Mims, Sayre. And there's a big reason why. Like, Marvin hasn't been featured in the offense, but he's had an impact somewhere else that's been big for Denver on special teams.
Well, he's one of the best punt returners in the game. Look, and you give him opportunities back there. I know the Raiders punter was absolutely booming it. He was kind of in home run derby mode out there trying to hit it
in person.
I mean, my gosh, I bet it sounded like a cannonball was being shot out. It was crazy to see. But Marvin, obviously, very, very used to whatever anybody's throwing at him or kicking at him, I guess you should say, in that. But he had one big return that set the Broncos up with great field position, Cody. And he had a couple of nice returns in this game. He's so natural out there. I mean, he sees the lanes before he even catches the ball. And you could tell, like, he obviously catches the ball really well. That's such a big part of the battle of being a good punt returner, is like, you can't screw that part up. And beyond that, you have to have the vision to be able to know, all right, my blockers are going to be here, or I see the defender coming this way out of the corner of my eye, I'm going to go here. He has that big return. He actually had a big play offensively, the running play that he had in this game as well. So it was nice to see him getting a little bit more opportunities with the ball in his hands, because Cody, when Marvin has the ball in his hands, good things do seem to happen. So I know that the Broncos want to get him the ball more. The punt return game, that's their opportunity right now to get him the ball as much as possible. And he made the most of his opportunity on Sunday.
I think the offensive stuff will come with time here, but you mentioned it. Obviously, that 38-yard return that he had set up the Broncos' second offensive drive of the second half, where they marched downfield, and obviously they get a touchdown. I mean, to start off at near midfield and to be able to capitalize on a couple of big runs, and all of a sudden, little Jordan Humphrey has a 24-yard catch and run. Things are kind of moving there, and now you have momentum. That was a big catalyst, I think, for the Broncos in the second half to get things going offensively. So Marvin gets the unsung hero game ball. But look, Broncos Country, we handed out our game balls. We're always curious for who you are giving a game ball to. Make sure, if you're listening or watching Locked On Broncos, you reach out to us on social media at Cody Roark NFL, at Sayre Bedinger, or you can comment on YouTube. Who gets a game ball? Offense, defense, unsung hero. Make sure you let us know. But that'll wrap up today's Locked On Broncos postgame report. Denver victorious 34-18, a dominant second half as Denver scores 34 unanswered points to snap the Raiders' 8-game winning streak. There's a lot that's going to go in as the Los Angeles Chargers are now preparing to come to town this week. One thing we are going to highlight, Broncos Country, if you're an everyday listener, here's what you can expect on tomorrow's episode of the show. We'll dive deep into why we believe Patrick Surtain, after 5 weeks of the NFL season, is firmly in the conversation and in the driver's seat right now for a potential Defensive Player of the Year recognition. We'll break that down and much more on Locked On Broncos. We'll see you tomorrow.